I grew up in a really tiny town in Kentucky. When it came time for college, I ended up at a small university just about 20 minutes from my childhood home. This was back in 2021, so COVID was still heavily influencing everything, especially campus life. Because of the pandemic, most students weren't actually staying in the dorms. They were renting apartments nearby. But, being completely broke, I didn't have that option. So, I stayed on campus during the week and just drove home on the weekends. It was a compromise, but I was still determined to get that full college experience. On my first day, I finally met my new roommate. We'd already chatted a bit over text. The school had given her my phone number, which I thought was a little weird, but she messaged me first and seemed pretty nice. When I met her in person, she was still polite, but she barely spoke and had this definite air of privilege about her. It was subtle, but you could feel it. At one point, she casually mentioned, "Everyone has their own rooms because there aren't many students. I had this one to myself last semester, and I did this semester too. Until you showed up, I was a bit taken aback by that comment, but I just brushed it off and changed the subject. I explained that since I lived so close, I'd be leaving every Friday afternoon and coming back around 6 a.m. on Monday mornings. It turned out she spent most of her time during the week with her boyfriend in his dorm anyway, so it seemed like a perfect setup. But that's when things got creepy. That first Friday, I packed up my weekend bag, said my goodbyes, and left. I came back right on schedule at 6 a.m. on Monday. I didn't have my first class until 10, so I decided to catch a little more sleep. I climbed into bed, and about 10 minutes later, I felt the edge of my mattress indent, like someone was leaning on it. I froze. I didn't move a muscle. After what felt like a full minute, the pressure was gone. It finally hit me. Someone had been right there, leaning on my bed. I quickly turned around to look at my roommate. She was facing the wall, completely still, seemingly fast asleep. I tried to tell myself I was just imagining things. The next weekend, the same routine. I came back Monday morning, got into bed, and then the entire side of my bed sagged down, like someone had sat right next to me. The weight was undeniable this time. Again, I just laid there, not moving, my heart pounding in my chest. Then I heard a soft thump as they jumped off my high lofted bed. I glanced over, and just like before, she was facing the wall, perfectly still. My mind was racing, but I still couldn't bring myself to confront her. What would I even say? By the third Monday, I was absolutely terrified. I was dreading going back to my room, but I had to. I got into bed, my whole body tense, just waiting. Sure enough, I felt the bed indent again, but this time was different. This time I felt a hand on the back of my neck. My heart just dropped into my stomach. It wasn't a squeeze, just a cold, firm hand resting there. It felt like an eternity before the hand finally lifted and the person left. I didn't wait another second. I bolted out of that room, ran outside, and called my mom, sobbing. I switched rooms immediately after that. It was only later that I remembered something she'd said when we first met. She mentioned her previous roommate didn't stay long, but she never explained why. I also remembered a drawer she had that was full of prescription medications, which she claimed were just for her skin. I'll never know for sure what was happening. Was she sleepwalking? Was it something more sinister? My mom thinks she was testing me, pushing my boundaries to see how far she could go. I guess I'll never have the answer. Studying at Sheffield Hallam University between 2021 and 2023 was a unique experience. Sheffield isn't exactly famous for its booming nightlife, so a lot of us students spent our late nights on campus. The 24/7 library was always an option, but sometimes you just needed the quiet of an academic building. I was in this advanced statistics class, and the professor was legendary for assigning these absolutely monstrous projects. One night, my personal laptop decided to throw a fit, so I figured I'd use the powerful computers in the business building. Now, you have to picture this place. It's an old 3-story building, kind of set off from the main campus buzz. At night, it's dead silent, almost unnervingly so. Around 10 p.m., I swiped my student card. The lock clicked open, and I headed up to the computer lab on the second floor. It was completely empty, just the low hum of the machines. I settled in, got my files open, and just started grinding away at this stats assignment. Time just kind of melted away as I got into the zone. You know how it is. By about 11:30, I was deep in concentration when a loud slam echoed through the building. It sounded like a heavy door, somewhere deeper inside. It was startling, but I figured it was probably just a late-working professor or another student. Then, I heard footsteps. They weren't rushed. They were slow, heavy, and very deliberate, coming down the hallway right outside the lab. My focus shattered instantly. The footsteps stopped directly outside my door. Silence. Then, the handle started to rattle. My heart just leaped into my throat. The door locks automatically after hours, so I knew it was secure, but whoever was out there kept trying it, rattling the handle with this insistent, creepy rhythm. My mind started racing. Who would be trying to get into a locked computer lab at this hour? Then, as suddenly as they started, the footsteps walked away. I let out a breath I didn't even realize I was holding, trying to convince myself it was just a security guard on their rounds. I tried to get back to my work, but the silence felt different now, heavier. About 10 minutes later, I heard it again. Footsteps, but this time, they weren't in the hall. They were above me, coming from inside the ceiling. It was this muffled, scraping sound, moving across the ceiling tiles right over my head. My blood ran cold. I froze, staring up at the acoustic panels. And then I saw at one of the tiles, not directly above me, but closer to the corner, shifted. Just a tiny, fractional movement. But it was undeniable. Someone was in the ceiling. That was it. That was my cue. I wasn't sticking around to find out who or why. Adrenaline kicked in. I yanked my flash drive out of the computer so hard I was surprised I did unbreak it. I crammed my books, my jacket, everything into my backpack without even looking. I bolted for the door, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the push bar, and burst out into the empty hallway. My only thought was to get to the main stairwell and out of the building. As I reached the stairwell, I made the mistake of looking up, and I will never ever forget what I saw. One floor above me, standing at the railing and looking down, was a man. He was wearing baggy dark clothes, and his face was mostly lost in the shadows, but I could see his mouth. It was hanging open in this wide, silent, terrifying grin. He was just standing there, staring right at me. I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe. I just turned and ran. I flew down those stairs, hit the main doors, and didn't stop running until I was back in the well-lit part of campus. The next morning, morbid curiosity got the better of me. I had to know if I'd imagined it. I went back to the business building, back to that same computer lab. I pushed the door open, and my stomach dropped. Right above the desk where I had been sitting, a ceiling tile was gone. Just an empty, dark square. And across the room, in the corner where I'd seen the movement, another tile was missing. Someone had been up there. They had been crawling in the ceiling, watching me, maybe even trying to find a way down. I dread to think what would have happened if I hadn't looked up, if I hadn't left when I did. I never stayed late in that building again. Hey everyone, my name is Emily, and I want to share a story that happened to me when I was 16. It's something I am still processing, but I feel it's important to talk about. This took place at my college in the UK. Our school had this system where everyone wore an ID lanyard to get through doors. You could walk into the main building, but to access any classrooms or hallways, you had to scan your ID card. It was pretty common for students to wear their lanyards with the photo side flipped inward, so you couldn't really see who it belonged to. It was only my second full day at this new school. I remember it so clearly. After lunch, ID had a bit too much juice and really needed to use the bathroom during my next class. My teacher wasn't thrilled, but eventually let me go. The hallways were deserted, which was a little eerie. I walked through the empty cafeteria, used the bathroom, and started heading back. That's when I saw him. A man was sitting at one of the cafeteria tables, all by himself. He was definitely too old to be a student, but he was wearing a school lanyard, so I figured he must be a teacher or a staff member, just like everyone else. His ID card was flipped backward. As I walked past, he looked up and said, "Excuse me, I need some help getting some work things out of my car." Without even a second thought, I just said, "Sure." It seemed like a normal request from a teacher. We walked out of the building together in complete silence. Looking back, I remember he seemed really nervous, constantly fidgeting with his hands. We walked towards the car park, which was kind of hidden from the main building by a row of thick bushes. As we got closer, he pointed to a blue car at the far end of the lot. "That's my car, the blue one over there," he said. That's when my heart stopped. I saw movement in the back seat. It wasn't just a flicker. There were two men hunched down, trying to hide. Just as I registered what I was seeing, the back door of the car creaked open. Panic took over. I turned to run, but he was faster. He grabbed my arm, his grip like iron. I don't know how, but with a surge of adrenaline, I managed to yank myself free and just sprinted. I ran faster than I ever thought I could, straight back towards the school's glass entrance doors. They slid open just as I reached them. I burst inside, gasping for breath, and found the nearest staff member, telling them everything that had just happened. The police were called immediately. It turned out the man had found a lost student's lanyard and used it to get inside the school. He and the two men in the car were later arrested for attempted kidnapping. This experience changed my life. I still go to therapy to work through the trauma,